The story begins with an average salaryman, just a regular guy who enjoyed nothing more than playing his favorite video game. One day, his arteries staged a protest and he died of heart attack. Truck-kun, the supposed savior of losers, dismissed him saying, "Hey, this guy's pathetic even for my standards." He wakes up in a strange, unfamiliar room and he looks at the face of a red-haired beautiful woman. He assumes he is in a hospital and the woman is a nurse. Then he spots a flying dog. What? A maid walks up to the red-haired baddie, our MC new mother, and taunts the red-haired baddie that, "Your kid's ugly as f***," to which our baddie replies that he took upon his father's side. They point a mirror at our main character to prove their point, and there he is. A baby. He almost shits himself. Almost. Time skips 3 years into the future, and MC has realized at this point that he had been reincarnated into another world. His name is Ars Louvent. Ars quickly began studying at a young age. He realized the world here is not like Earth and that the world he was now in, the Summer Fourth Continent, had a rather complicated history. It used to be divided into 7 kingdoms: Rophile, Ansel, Paradile, Canship, Sites, and Mission Kingdom. But the kingdom of Ansel went full British and colonizes all of them, and they slapped a lazy-ass name on it: the Summer Fourth Empire. He was born in the Louvent family, which is a noble household that ruled over a small region in previously Mission Kingdom called Lamberg. And surprisingly, magic existed in this world. Alright, genius. The next things he discovers is that water is wet, idiot. His new life is not too bad really. He had everything he needed. A harem of servants attending to his every whim, food ready when he wanted it, and he is happy of this upgrade of life. He also has a unique skill that no one else have. One afternoon, he decided to visit the barracks. He greets the soldier, and they seem happy to have him around. There, he noticed a soldier named Melis who was busy getting his ass kicked. Ars reveals his unique ability called Appraisal. Using Appraisal, he was able to see Melis's stats. It turned out Melis had no talent with the spear, but could have been an archer god. Ars advised him to try using a bow, but Melis refused. "Real man, don't fight from a distance," he said, which made Ars angry. And he told him about how his girlfriend went around testing every other spear in the barracks because Melis' spear was too weak. Every soldier in the barracks nodded, and Melis finally picked up the bow. He had never used a bow before, but surprisingly, he hit the target on his first attempt. The soldiers were skeptical, convinced it was luck, so they made him try again, and again, and again. Each time, Melis's precision was flawless. Eventually, they conceded that he was indeed talented, and they began to wonder how Ars had figured out that this loser cuck was actually good at something. Ars, not wanting to reveal his appraisal ability, simply shrugged and said it was instinct. He didn't see the point in explaining something so unbelievable. He was the only one who could use it after all. Later, when he looked at himself in the mirror, trying to check his own stats, he realized his ability only worked on others. During dinner with his family, Ars's father Raven, who looks angry and scary to Ars, but to me, I think the poor guy is just thinking that he has blonde hair while Ars' mother has red hair, so where did this blue color came from? Anyways, Raven expressed genuine admiration for his son's insight in discovering Melis's talent and tells him that Melis' girlfriend tried his spear too and liked it a lot. It turned out Raven had once been a dirty commoner himself, rising to power through sheer combat ability. Ars checks his father's stats and, unsurprisingly, found that he was the greatest warrior in the land and he can take 10 men single-handedly. Take out 10 men single-handedly. Raven advised Ars to focus on his instincts, arguing that they would be useful when Ars became a ruler, and it is an important skill for a lord to find talent. After that dinner conversation with Daddy, Ars began studying the Empire, though the more he learned, the more he realized the future of this continent is fucked. Rulers are corrupt, dirty peasants are revolting because of the poor living conditions. He worried that civil war was imminent, and he will probably be forced to fight as well. He is scared because he is still a weakling, and he doubts that protecting his family and his people is not something his weak ass is capable of. Next morning, he decided to use his ability to find the perfect soldier. He sneaks out of his rich castle and starts walking around the village. A woman stop him asking him if this young lady lost his mother in the crowd or something. Ars tells this fat woman to mind her business and continue with his side quest. He starts using his ability on regular people and finds out they are all a bunch of useless losers. After some time, he sits down and his eyes start watering because of wasting his ability so much. Then he spots a boy getting kicked out of a shop by racist women. Everyone looks down on him because he's from the Malkans, a so-called inferior race. He recalls them as the slave race that were brought to this continent for slavery. The young man just sits on the road feeling helpless. Ars walks up to him and offers him food. The young man introduces himself as Rights. Ars gives him food, and while Rights eats, Ars checks his stats and is completely stunned by how insane they are. He has multiple A and S rank skills just like Ars' father. Ars looks at him all starry eyes. Rights thinks to himself, what the hell is wrong with this nutcase, and starts walking away, but Ars follows him to dark alleyway. I don't like where this is heading. Thankfully, Rights is not a creep and just keeps on telling him to f*** off. Ars invites him to become his retainer. He wants to gather the best people to strengthen his army. Rietz doesn't believe him at first, thinking he's some loser rich brat out here collecting Pokemons. Ars proves he's a noble by showing the Louvent family crest and explains that Rietz has immense potential. Rietz worries he'll just cause trouble since everyone hates Malkins and starts to walk away. Ars refuses to give up and bribes Rietz with food to accept his invitation. They head back to Louvent Mansion. The servants serve Ars his usual meal, but these racist losers serve Rights a simple plate of beans and tells him to get lost as soon as he eats it. Ars realizes the servants hate Malkins and knows he can't convince them otherwise, but unlike an average American, he does something to solve the problem. So, he drags his chair and sits beside Rights and shares his food. The servants are shocked, but Ars tells them to shut it as Rights is his honored guest, so they start treating him well. Ars asks Rights why he was in the village. Rights explains he used to work as a mercenary. His companions died in battle, leaving him alone, wandering to the village. He tried joining other mercenaries, but they rejected him because he was just a child and they didn't think he could fight. One of the servants interrupts, saying it's time for Rights to leave, but Ars tells him to shut it again, as he's going to make Rights his retainer, which makes the servant lose it. Raven hears about this and calls Ars, saying a Malkin wouldn't make a good retainer. Ars' father is also a racist. Ars insists that Rights has incredible potential and it would be a waste to let him go. Raven is skeptical, reminding Ars that Malkins are considered inferior, but Ars convinces him to test Rights' abilities. Raven remembers how Ars discovered Melis's talent, so he agrees to give Rights a chance. If he passes, he'll be hired as a soldier. Ars is thrilled, but Raven explains Rights will have a mock duel with him. Ars is nervous because Rights is only 14 and hasn't reached full potential. Ars checks their stats and sees there's no contest, but Raven says he'll go easy on Rights, giving him a fighting chance. They go to the barracks. Rietz wonders why Ars wants him as a retainer, considering he's persecuted everywhere he goes. Ars explains he needs Rights' help because he plans to become the lord of the land and needs someone capable of leading his army. At the barracks, Raven prepares to fight. He tells Rights to grab a sword and explains that he'll win if he lands a hit before the timer runs out. Raven charges in. Rietz struggles to defend himself, but the soldiers are impressed. He could even hold his own against someone as skilled as Raven. Raven lands a hit, knocking Rights down, and then warns him that time is running out. But Rights refuses to give up, knowing Ars is counting on him. He charges again. Raven tries to block, but the attack grazes him. Everyone is shocked. Raven admits he lost and decides to hire Rietz as a soldier. Ars thanks his father for giving Rietz a chance. Raven admits he has talent and could become a great swordsman. Raven goes on to reveal he was worried about Ars' blue hair and still curses himself for trusting a red hair. But he believes Ars will become a great man since he has the power to recognize talent. The soldiers praise Rights as an excellent fighter. Sometime later, Rights wears his uniform while accompanying Ars. Ars wonders why he's taking on servant duties. Rights explains that he likes kids. Everyone was right with their racist remarks. He says he always dreamed of serving a young lord and knows he would have died if Ars hadn't taken him in. He wants to spend the rest of his life serving him. After a few months, Rights is accepted by everyone and even receives tutoring. This boosts his intelligence stat, making him one of the most knowledgeable people in the house. He gives Ars a lesson on the Summerforth Empire, explaining how the Ansel Kingdom conquered the other 6 kingdoms over 200 years ago. But now, the empire is in a bad spot. The ruler Bidris is a child. Power is held by retainers. Factions are clashing. Authority is weak. Revolts are growing, and governors are defying the crown. Ars thinks that these conflicts are only going to get worse, so he realizes he needs to prepare and gather the most talented people on his side. He is treating this as a Pokemon game. He wonders where the next conflict might happen, and Rights points out at their province, Mission. The governor of their neighboring county is old and gone senile, so it's likely he'll die within the next few years. Time for geography lessons for you guys. This is the Summerforth continent. Summerforth Empire is divided into provinces, and provinces are further divided into duchies. Each duchy is further divided into countries or districts. This part here is Mission Province. This small blue part is Canary District. The old senile guy is the duke or governor of this Canary District. Ars and his family are a part of noble family ruling a small town, Lamberg in the Canary District. So the Duke of Canary District is kicking the bucket very soon. Both sons seem eager to take the position, which probably means a war is coming. Older son has the right to succession, but everyone wants the younger son since he is more competent. Ars wonders who his father would side with, and Rietz thinks it would be the older brother since it's his right to inherit. I hope you got an idea of what's the conflict about. Ars worries about what would happen if his father ended up on the losing side, but Rietz sees this as an opportunity. Performing well in a major conflict could help a lord climb the ranks, and he thinks they need to recruit more people to get stronger. They head out and see Raven training. Ars notices he's been spending more time honing his skills, which makes sense because war is coming. Ars mentions they're heading to the town to find recruits, and his father suggests looking for someone with a talent for magic, since magic would be invaluable in upcoming battles. We see that Ars once tried to learn magic but quickly realized he is a loser in this life too. Ars and Rietz leave their small country for a big city. They arrive in the capital city of Canary District, and Ars is blown away by how many people there are. Rietz notes that the population is about 50 times bigger than Lamberg's. Pyre's House of Noble family are in charge of the county this town is located in. Ars notices that everyone looks wealthy and wishes the people of Lamberg could have a life like this. Rietz thinks this is a good place to find someone with real potential since there are so many people. Ars starts scanning the crowd with his appraisal ability, but after a while, no one catches his eye. They keep searching, and Ars notices an alley full of homeless people. He is surprised by this, as this is a big city with so many rich people in it. Still, there are people living in miserable states. This is called capitalism, kid. Ars wants to help them, but Rietz says there's not much they can do in their current position. Ars reflects that while he thought the town was amazing, he actually wants to build a place where even the less fortunate can make a life for themselves. Rietz feels proud to serve him. They reach the market, and Ars is amazed by all the different foods. A man offers to sell him a dragon egg. The man looks like scammer, and unknown to him, Ars is from modern world, where he received countless calls from Microsoft support telling him his PC was hacked so he won't fall for it. Ars immediately imagines having a dragon as a pet and decides to buy 3, but Rietz suddenly points his blade at the man, accusing him of being a scammer. The man insists he's legit, but Rietz knows that trade with the northern continent is frozen, so there's no way he could have dragon eggs. He's about to take action against the man, but Ars holds him back as bystanders start staring. Rietz apologizes for overreacting, and Ars thanks him for looking out for him. They take a lunch break, and Ars rushes over to a candy stall, only to get bumped and realize he's been robbed. Rietz chases after the thief and grabs their cloak, revealing it's a girl. She turns a corner, only to be surrounded by thugs who start beating her. Ars yells at them to stop, and one man attacks him, but Rietz steps in and takes him out with a single punch. He easily handles the other 2 men, and they retreat, warning that it's not over. Ars checks on the girl and is amazed when he sees her stats. He learns her name is Charlotte, and sees that she has S-tier aptitude for magic, as well as insanely high leadership and prowess stats. Rietz asks Ars for his coin pouch back, but Ars suddenly asks Charlotte to become his retainer. Rietz thinks she's just a thief, but Ars points out her magical talent. Charlotte refuses, saying she won't serve a spoiled brat like him and she has never even used magic before. Ars becomes desperate, trying to convince her. He reasons that she steals because life has been hard, and he promises her food and a salary, but she thinks he's just a spoiled noble. She says he doesn't deserve his privilege and was just lucky to be born noble. Charlotte refuses to be a tool for him, but Ars insists he's different and explains that he wants to build a place where everyone has a chance. Charlotte counters that they can't wait for someday because every day is a struggle for people like her. Rietz understands her feelings but still insists she return the coin pouch. Charlotte gives it back since they saved her. Ars asks about the men, and she explains they worked for a slave trader. She had been caught stealing from a noble and sold into slavery. She escaped, but the trader sent men after her. Ars wonders why she stayed in town after escaping. We see children rush up to her, and she explains she couldn't leave them behind. Ars agrees not to recruit her, but decides to give her some money anyway. That night, Ars keeps thinking about her. Rietz notes that he was in a similar situation and understands how she feels. He reflects that she must have been treated horribly by nobles in the past and sees everyone as an enemy, but Rietz tells Ars he's different. Ars thinks about a flaw in his plan to create a better world, but then they hear the children calling for Charlotte. Ars rushes to them and asks what's happening. They tell him, Charlotte has been taken. We learn that Charlotte can't even remember the last time she cried. Her parents abandoned her, and she's had a miserable life. She had no choice but to steal, often wondering why she was even born into this world. Charlotte's backstory sure did make me emotional, like how she watches a girl her age getting pampered while she sits alone. Nah man, who is cutting onions? The men take her to their boss and beat her, surprised she doesn't cry. Their boss, Slaver, warns them not to ruin her appearance since she's already been sold. They take her money and she tries to resist, but one man stops her. Charlotte thinks about the children, knowing they need money to survive, but the slave trader dismisses her life as worthless and tells her to accept her fate. Suddenly, Wrights shows up and attacks the men, knocking them down. The slavers tells his man to stop, but Ars runs into the room, asks Charlotte if she is fine, while the slaver recognizes him as a noble. He asks if Ars needs anything. Ars tells him to release her, but Slaver refuses, insisting she's his merchandise. Charlotte tells Ars to mind his own business. Ars insists he's worried about her. He notes that her eyes always seem empty and that she lacks ambition despite her insane talent. Ars tells the slaver that everyone deserves hope and the future to look up to, but the slaver looks at him like, "What is this little runt babbling about?" He laughs, reminding him that she's just a slave. Upset, Ars tells the slaver that he's stealing her future. He argues that she should be able to decide what she wants to become. We learn that Charlotte had closed her heart long ago and never cried, seeing it as weakness. She knew she had to do whatever was necessary to survive. Suddenly, tears start flowing, and the slaver gets fed up. He orders his men to take care of Ars. One man threatens to beat him, but Wright steps in, telling them they deserve to die for angering his master. They try to fight him, but Wright defeats them effortlessly. Their mages attempt a fire spell to burn him alive, but it fails and he smashes them as well. Wright thinks they're pathetic. Slaver calls his right-hand man, revealing he used to be an army captain but was kicked out for bad behavior. Charlotte worries, but Ars checks his stats and realizes the man isn't impressive. He tries to attack Wright but quickly finds he's no match and gets knocked out. The slaver can't believe what just happened. His men are dead like his moral values. He asks what he did to deserve this and reminds Ars that slave trading is legal in the city. So, Ars offers to pay the slaver for Charlotte, but Slaver refuses, saying he already has a buyer. Reincarnated advises Slaver to consider his reputation. If people find out his slave was taken, his business will suffer. Reincarnated suggests claiming that someone else bought Charlotte for a higher price and threatens him if he refuses. Slaver decides to let them take her. As they leave the city, Charlotte asks to go somewhere special. She leads them to her secret spot, which offers a beautiful view of the city. She explains she comes there to clear her mind and asks Ars why he wants to create a peaceful city for people like her. Ars says it's because he likes kids, which makes her find him weird, reminding him that he's also just a kid. He recalls his past life, where he was always exhausted from work, but the smiles of children brightened his day. He believes children give people hope and inspire everyone to work toward a brighter future. He wants to give them a place to enjoy life, seeing it as his duty as a ruler. Charlotte likes this answer and decides to join him, saying she wants to make the children happy. Reincarnated decides to test her, giving her a magical pendant and asking her to cast a spell while wearing it. Charlotte admits she's never used magic before. Reincarnated teaches her a basic spell, and she follows his instructions, creating a fireball that causes a massive explosion. Everyone is amazed by the destructive power, and the pendant shatters after she uses all its energy. Ars and Reincarnated are stunned by how powerful she is, thinking she's incredible. Charlotte asks Ars if he'll provide food and shelter. He confirms and even says he'll give her a salary. She requests that her salary be given to the children in the city so she can help them survive. Ars agrees, and she decides to serve him to the best of her abilities. She says goodbye to the children, who cry, and Ars notes that he's successfully recruited talented vassals who will be valuable assets to his family. He wonders if he can meet everyone's expectations, but he's determined to achieve his goals. While traveling, they notice Charlotte eating like a pig. Reincarnated thinks they need to teach her basic manners since she'll be accompanying Ars during gatherings. Charlotte isn't interested, thinking it's a waste of time. They reach the mansion, but Raven refuses to let Charlotte join the army, saying she is a dishwasher and women only belong in the kitchen. He is both racist and misogynistic. Very bad. Ars tells her to demonstrate her powers. She casts a spell, and Raven is stunned by her strength. He immediately folds and starts believing in women empowerment. He agrees to let her join the army. 3 years later, Raven's army returns from battle. We learn about a territorial dispute with the Duchy of Sayetz, which forced Raven into military service. Ars asks about the battle, and Raven explains that they crushed the enemy, with Charlotte's magic leading them to victory. Charlotte is still 15, and I don't have anything to say about her. Charlotte is now recognized as the strongest mage on the battlefield and commands the magic unit, making her indispensable to the army. Ars now has newborn siblings, both having blue hair like him. There is a blue-haired knight banging our baddie and no one's questioning it. Ars checks their stats and see them both showing remarkable talents. He thinks they'll be able to support the family in the future. Ars is still searching for new Pokemons but can seem to find one. Then Ryites tells him about the Kiska brothers, a hunter family that recently moved into Lambert, and notes they seem talented. Ars decides to seek them out, and Charlotte volunteers to come along to keep Ars safe and safely locks him between two airbags in case things went south. In the woods, they spot a boar fleeing, but an arrow takes it down in one shot. The Kiska brothers arrive. Ars uses his ability and identifies them as Gatis and Marcus Kiska, recognizing their talents and thinking they'll make competent soldiers, but they are mid for Ars standards. They invite Ars to their home, where their father, Greg, prepares a feast for them. Charlotte tastes the food and says it's delicious. Gaddis explains it's from the creature they just hunted, called a Suvu, but we will still call it a boar. Greg asks Ars what he's doing in the woods. Ars explains he wants to invite Gatis and Marcus to join his army because they're talented. Greg is overjoyed. He mentions another son, Rizal, who isn't as capable as his brothers. They see him taking bread from the table, and Greg scolds him to greet the guests properly. Ars uses his skill on Rizal and realizes he's a genius, with intellect off the charts. Ars tells Greg he wants Rizal as his vassal, but Greg thinks it's a bad idea, worrying that Rizal will just cause trouble. Ars tells him to shut up, and he didn't ask for his opinion. He directly asked Rizal if he can actually do it. Rizal gets scared, thinking these lunatics will leave him to die at the battlefield, so he refuses, telling Ars he doesn't want to die. He goes back to his room. Greg tells Ars that Rizal has been locking himself in there ever since his mother passed away, so he doesn't really have any life skills. Ars points out that he's a genius, thinking Rizal could become an excellent tactician in the future, and says he likes kids. So, Ars decided to give it another shot. He enters Rizal's room and sees him reading a book. Rizal explains it's the only book they have in the house, and his mother used to read it to him. He says reading it gives him peace of mind. Ars invites him to his library, saying he can read as much as he wants. Rizal initially refuses, not trusting Ars, but he's curious about reading more books. He eventually agrees but says he'll bring his brothers along. They head to the mansion. Ars introduces Charlotte to Gatis and Marcus, and she shows them around the barracks. Meanwhile, Rizal enters the library. Ars tells him to read any books he's interested in. He tells Ryites to take care of him and reminds him that he also needs to study, then leaves the library. Ars ends up falling asleep, forgetting he left Rizal in the library for hours, thinking he must have already left. He returns and finds that Rizal fell asleep after reading countless books. Ars checks his stats and sees that Rizal's intellect is growing rapidly. He notes that Rizal can learn extremely fast. His brothers join them and start making fun of Rizal, assuming Rizal just wasted time in the library since he was never taught to read. Ars is surprised to hear this. The brothers elaborate that apart from their mother, no one knew how to read as they are hunters, and it's not a part of their job description. Rizal wakes up and Ars asks how he learned to read. Rizal explains he learned by observing his mother and matching it with the shapes on the book, which everyone finds hard to believe. The next day, Ars visits the brothers, telling them to set traps to catch the prey. Rizal explains he's read about traps, so Ars encourages him to put his knowledge to use. His brothers support him, so he decides to try it. After a while, Greg sees Rizal's trap and realizes it can capture multiple boars at once. Rizal explains he made it because he's worried about their father. Since his brothers will become soldiers, Greg would have a harder time hunting for food. He painted the fence yellow since the male boars hates yellow color, so the boars would charge in. Greg notices herbs hanging above, and Rizal explains that young boars and their mothers dislike the smell, so the herbs keep them away. This will ensure that they don't overhunt the boars and allow them to continue reproducing. His brothers think he's amazing, while Rizal's dad Greg just shrugs it off like it's no big deal. Greg tells Rizal to leave the house with his brothers and asks Ars to take care of them. Rizal assumes his father hates him, but Ars thinks Greg has a good reason for acting this way. That evening, Rizal reflects on his mother's death, thinking his father hates him because her health declined after giving birth to him. He blames himself. Suddenly, he overhears Greg talking to his brothers. Gaddis wonders why Greg is treating Rizal so harshly. Greg explains he wants Rizal to hate him because he feels he failed as a father by not recognizing his son's talent. He reveals that he loves Rizal and wants him to reach his full potential, but thinks he might be getting in the way. So, he wants Rizal to forget about him and asks Gatis and Marcus to support their brother. Rizal hears everything and starts crying. The next day, Ars comes to take the boys away. They prepare to leave while Greg chops wood. Rizal approaches him and says he doesn't hate him, promising to do his best. He tells his father he wants to see him again. Greg is overjoyed and says he'll be waiting for their return. 3 years later, Ars turns 9 and Raven has become ill. Ars worries he's not in any condition to fight, but his father says he has no choice given the situation. The old duke has fallen sick but named his younger son Voss as successor. The elder brother, Kurin, insists the document is forged, causing a dispute. The retainers split over who should be the rightful successor, throwing the province of Mission into chaos. Sayats has also been taking advantage of this by invading them. Ars wonders if he'll have to fight, but his father tells him there's something more important for him to focus on, his betrothal. Since his fiancée is coming here, Ars is shocked. He can't believe he's never been told, and his father tells him it was engaged before he was even born. His father gives him a letter. Ars rushes to tell the others the news, wondering what he should do when a maid informs him that his fiancée has already arrived. He goes out to meet her, unsure how to act since he never had to deal with girls in his past life because of his ugly. The girl introduces herself as Lycia. Ars is instantly charmed, but when he checks her stats, he's shocked to see her ambition is insanely high, which seems at odds with her cute appearance. He worries she might be pretending and refuses to let her fool him, but as she talks, he finds her too adorable to resist and starts simping for her instead. He decides to show her around. Her butler, Jean, is surprised to see a Malkin in the house, but Lycia already knows about rights and tells Jean to apologize. Lycia is warmly welcomed and they share a meal together. She finds the meat delicious and asks about his meat. Where did he get such fine quality meat? To cook steak. Ars tells her about how they use traps to catch the boars. He thinks about how great she is. She mentions she passed through Lamberg on her way here. Ars regrets that it's raining so he can't show her around, but she tells him not to worry. The sun starts shining. He wonders if she can control the weather, but she explains she observed the clouds on her journey and knew it was just a passing rain. She tells him he can now show her the town. Meanwhile, Charlotte and Rizal watch them, both feeling a dangerous vibe from her. Ars and Lycia head into town and everyone is curious about the girl beside him. Ars soon come to a place where two men are arguing. Ars wonders what's happening and a woman explains it's a dispute over a magic stone order. The shopkeeper ordered flame magic stones, but the dealer delivered sound magic stones instead. Since it was only a verbal agreement, it's unclear who's actually at fault. Ars thinks he should try to handle the situation, but he worries about failing in front of Lycia. Charlotte shows up and offers to solve things the good old-fashioned way, but Lycia tells her to stop. Charlotte thinks she should mind her own business, but Lycia says she's a fan and even manages to charm Charlotte. Lycia decides she'll handle it herself and asks Ars to grant her a favor if she succeeds. Before he can make his mind about this, Lycia walks over to them and asks them to stop fighting. They wonder who she is, and she introduces herself as Ars's fiancée. They're pleased, thinking Ars is finally growing up. She offers to buy the sound magic stone, explaining that they're precious in her territory. She also says they have a volcano there, so she could sell the flame magic stone at a good price too. But she makes it clear that it was all Ars's idea. The men are happy that he cares about helping them. Ars tells them to write up a contract next time so this kind of mix-up doesn't happen again. The situation is resolved, and Ars thanks Lycia for her help. Later, Lycia brings up the favor, and Ars wonders what she wants. She simply asks him a question, what kind of girls he likes. Obviously, he will say, tall women with big ass, because obviously he is from the modern world and knows if you don't want to die, you say that. He tells her he likes people who speak their minds and don't hide things from him. I am not going to roast him for this one. It's a good one considering the situation he is in. She simply smiles and says she will take it as a reference. That night, Ars can't stop thinking about how he didn't figure out Lycia's intentions. When he goes to sleep, he finds her in his bed. He wonders if she's messing with him, but she says she wants an honest conversation. They have tea together, and Ars wonders what she wants to talk about. She reveals that she can sense people's feelings just by looking at them. She noticed he was suspicious of her when they first met and wants to know why. Ars decides to tell her the truth. He can see people's stats. He notes that her ambition is insanely high, which makes him think all her actions are calculated. She admits that she is ambitious, so Ars wonders what her goals are. She reveals that a woman's ambition is to make a good man fall in love with her. Ars realizes that the best path for her is to marry someone powerful. As a daughter of a noble in medieval era, he thinks she's unlucky since their territory is small, but Lycia knows what he's thinking. She says that even though their territory is tiny, after spending the day with him, she still wants to marry him. She believes he has great potential. Ars thinks he's just lucky to have good people around him. Lycia says that's exactly why he'll become great. His people see him as family, which she thinks is one of the most important abilities for a lord. She tells him she's fallen in love with him but decides to call it a night, leaving Ars all red. Aw! He panics about not responding, while we see Lisha outside feeling embarrassed as well. She's thinking about how this is the first time she's ever told someone how she truly feels. The next day, as she returned to her territory, her thoughts wandered. The world of nobles was a foul place, full of greed and deceit. People would stop at nothing to pull others down and climb higher. Lisha had long been troubled by her ability to read emotions. The negativity she sensed in others made her feel cursed. That was until the day she saw a woman happily married to a strong, prosperous man. That moment changed her perspective. She realized that if she too could marry a man of outstanding power and reputation, she could rise above the toxic world around her. From then on, she honed the art of reading and manipulating emotions, learning to lie and please, all while searching for the right family to marry into. Initially, she had no intention of marrying Ars. His family was weak, and his first impression of her had been unimpressive. No matter what she tried, he remained wary and suspicious. But then, something changed. During a trip through the market, Ars had apologized for the rough roads, concerned about her tender feet, and even brought her ointment to ease any discomfort from her shoes. That small, thoughtful gesture revealed his kindness and genuine care. Coupled with the respect he commanded from those around him, Lycia immediately saw him as an ideal man. At that moment, she fell in love. Now, Lisha recognized that Ars was not only capable and strong, but also kind. She resolved that his kindness could never become a weakness. As someone who would one day be closest to him, she swore to remove any obstacle in the way of their future happiness. After that first meeting, Ars and Lycia began exchanging letters frequently. Ars, feeling a bit anxious, having never conversed with a girl like this before, managed to flirt subtly in his responses. When Lisha visited him again, he gifted her some flower seeds, knowing she loved flowers. She thanked him warmly, but also reminded him that he still hadn't given her an answer. Ars is flustered, but she reminds him that he doesn't have to respond yet. She will work hard making him fall in love with her. We see Ars writing to her, telling her that his father is recovering and the succession conflict has calmed down. He hopes to see her again soon so he can tell her how he feels, thinking he wants to marry her too. 2 years later, Ars talks to a doctor about his father. The doctor says Raven's condition is worsening, so he should prepare for the worst. Meanwhile, in Arkansas, an assassin breaks into the castle and murders the Duke of Mission, that old senile and indecisive duke. The soldiers surround the assassin, but he jumps out the window and dies. This news reaches Ars' father, who reads the letter in front of his loyal council. Then asks Rizal about his opinion on the matter. Rizal explains a deadly war between the two sons of the late lord was inevitable. He emphasized that they should begin preparing their forces immediately. Raven considered the situation carefully. He noted that the county chief overseeing Mission would be forced to take a side in a succession, most likely supporting the older son over the younger. This meant that, regardless of their own plans, they would also have to align with the older son. Raven tries to get up, but collapses from unbearable pain. Days later, Ars receives a summons from the county chief for the council. Wrights wants to go with Charlotte in his father's place, but Ars refuses, deciding he must go himself. Lycia worries, wondering why she hasn't heard back from Ars. The trio arrives in the Canary district. Ars approaches the castle gate guard, showing the invitation letter and explaining they're representing the Louvent house. The guard verifies the invitation but wonders if Raven would really send a child. Charlotte wonders if the guard thinks they're lying. The guard recognizes her as Louvent's Princess of the Flames and writes as the Reaper. Ars wonders why they have such nicknames. The guard guides them through the castle, where they're greeted by Renard, the right-hand man of the Canary chief. Ars checks Renard's stats and sees he's a jack of all trades, balanced in every way. Renard has heard about Wrights and Charlotte and tries to recruit them, but they explain they're loyal to the Louvent house. He thinks it's a shame but acknowledges that Louvent must be a great place, and Ars thanks him. Ars takes them to the meeting room with the other leaders and introduces himself as Raven Louvent's son. The other leaders don't respond. He notices that the old man is Orsillo, the Lord of Coumer, who he used to play with when he was little. Orsillo remarks on how much Ars has grown and even offers him cookies, though the other fatty lords don't seem impressed. The doors suddenly open and everyone stands to greet the Canary chief, Lumiere Pyres, who thanks everyone for coming. Ars uses his ability on Lumiere and sees his stats match those of a territory chief, with high prowess and balanced skills all around. Lumiere mentions that the governor's assassination will likely trigger a succession war, so he's decided to support the older son, Curran, confirming what Al suspected about his father's prediction. He asks if anyone objects. They meet him outside, but everyone agrees, then instructs them to prepare their troops for war and ends the meeting. Lumiere speaks to Alhes, wishing his father well and noting that the Louvent house is impressively strong despite being small. He congratulates Alhes for representing Raven and admits he has high expectations. The fatty lord who had been staring at Ars calls him over, introducing himself as Hammond Plead from the Torquista territory. He realizes Hammond is Lisha's father. He also notices that Lisha seems upset with him lately and wonders what he did wrong. Hammond asks if Ars has been responding to his daughter's letters, and Ars admits he hasn't, because of the Duke's assassination and his father's worsening condition. Hammond acknowledges that she likes Ars, noting that she doesn't usually show her feelings but has been expressing herself more recently. He confesses that he prioritized his duties as a lord over his daughter when she was younger, so she often felt lonely. Hammond wants her to be happy and was angry at Ars for not replying sooner, but he admits part of it was his own fault. He apologizes and asks Ars to take care of Lisha. Ars promises to make her happy. He's glad to hear Hammond cares so much about his daughter. Ars returns home to tell his father, who notes that Ars went without telling him. Ars braced for anger, but instead his father praises him, saying he did an amazing job. Later, Ars writes to Lycia, apologizing for not responding and telling her he met her father. He hopes their families will cooperate during the war and remembers his promise to Hammond to win the war and protect Lisha. The next morning, Ars trains with Rietz. Rietz worries because Ars has been training non-stop, but Ars refuses to stop. He notices everyone is getting stronger while he hasn't improved much and feels frustrated. He recalls leading troops in simulated battles and realizing how disastrous it was, thinking he lacks real combat experience and is too afraid. Rosal arrives and warns that Said's forces are preparing to attack. Lumiere has ordered them to join the fight. Said's is invading mission, attacking Orsio's territory. If they succeed, Lamberg will be next. Ars knows his father can't go to battle, so he realizes he has to lead. He trembles but orders the troops to prepare and reads his promises to win his first battle. The troops gather and Ars begins his speech, but Raven suddenly appears, refusing to let him go to battle. Ars insists he's willing to fight for Lambert, even if it means dying. Rites tries to intervene, but Raven tells him to stay out of it. Ars explains that he has Rites and Charlotte by his side, but Raven comments that Ars doesn't have the face of a warrior. Ars is confused, and Raven orders a prisoner to be brought out for execution. Raven explains the man committed heinous crimes but had been sick, so he couldn't execute him until now. He tells Ars that if he can remain calm watching the execution, he'll recognize him as a warrior. The prisoner boasts about killing countless people, even children, claiming it makes him feel amazing. Raven orders the execution. Ars tries to stay composed but completely loses it. Raven declares that Ars isn't ready to lead troops and will lead them himself. Ars realizes he truly isn't ready for war. On the battlefield, Raven leads the men, taking down enemies as Rietz fights by his side. Rizal stays safe, managing formations while archers wipe out enemy infantry, and Charlotte uses her magic to breach the fortress. Raven and Rietz keep breaking enemy lines, and despite being outnumbered, they capture the enemy fort after a month of fighting. Raven and his men return to Lamberg after Ars' 12th birthday. His wife helps him rest, while the twins worry about him. Ars appears, greeting the group and asking about his father's health. Rietz notices that Ars has injuries all over him, so Ars brushes it off, explaining it was from his training. Ars asks about the battle. Rietz explains that Raven led them to victory, but it took a serious toll on his body. Ars blames himself for forcing his father to fight, but Rietz reminds him that Raven was already sick. Ars thanks them for their concern and leaves to continue training. It's getting late, and Charlotte notes she's heard about how Ars kept training while they were at battle. Everyone hopes Raven doesn't get worse as Lisha comes to visit, but she's worried about Ars. She's noticed a change in the tone of his letters ever since the conflict began. She asks if he's okay, and Charlotte and Rizal nudge Rietz to tell her the truth. Rietz explains that Ars is struggling because he can't fight and feels responsible for his father's condition. Lycia feels ashamed for not doing anything, so she heads to the training room and quietly opens the door. She sees Ars being knocked down repeatedly as a soldier tells him to continue training the next day. Ars forces himself up and keeps training, while Lycia quietly decides to leave. Rietz asks if she won't talk to him, but she thinks it's not the right time. A maid suddenly announces that Raven has woken up and asked to speak with them. Raven thanks them for coming and apologizes for worrying them. Charlotte wonders what's gotten into him. He explains that he's not speaking as their lord but as a father and asks what they think of their lives. They answer that Lambert feels like home, which makes Raven happy, but he confesses that he doesn't have much time left. They plead with him not to speak like that, but he simply remembers how unsure he felt when Ars first brought them in. He recalls Wrights being a Malkin, Charlotte a thief, and Rizal a mere child when they arrived, and he's proud that they've all become pillars of the house. Raven comments that Ars isn't strong enough for war and regrets not taking him into battle when he was healthy or teaching him about the harsh realities of the world. Realizing it's too late for himself, Raven asks a favor to help Ars, speaking to them as a father. Rizal promises to study harder so he can support Ars, no longer blaming himself. Charlotte pledges to serve Ars because he gave her life meaning and she wants to experience the world he'll build. Wrights promises to fight anyone who stands in Ars's way. They thank Raven for trusting them. He opens the door for Lycia, telling her that Raven wants to speak with her. Lycia enters alone and introduces herself. Raven apologizes for seeing her in such a sad state and asks if she remembers when they first met. She's surprised not remembering, so he explains that he was the one who arranged her engagement to Ars. He saw her at a funeral and admired her wisdom and kindness, thinking Ars would need someone like her. Wait, that's kinda creepy. Lycia is shocked. Raven asks her to stay by Ars's side, despite their house being small, but she interrupts, saying Ars is already doing his best to surpass him. Raven realizes she's in love with Ars and feels relieved that his son is in good hands. She leaves, telling everyone that Raven wants to see Ars, so they head to the training room. Ars goes to speak with his father and is happy to see him awake. He tells Raven that he researched his illness and found medicine that could help him recover, but Raven ignores him and instead comments on how much he has grown. Raven becomes emotional and shares his story. He was born in a remote village in Mission, governed by a tyrant who extorted the people. One day, he couldn't stand it anymore and ran away to the city. Sounds like my dad explaining how he went to work back in the day. The governor of Mission was visiting at the time, and Raven recalls the moment that inspired him. He decided to become a man capable of being a governor and leading soldiers into battle. He studied the art of the sword and fought with all his heart, standing out enough to be appointed head of a domain. He apologizes for burdening Ars with the responsibility of being his son, but Ars is grateful to have him as a father. Raven asks about Lycia, warning that she's fierce and takes after her mother more than Hammond. Ars wonders if he's close to Hammond, so Raven shares stories from his youth and the two spend the entire night talking. The next morning, Raven passes away. They hold his funeral. Ars comforts his siblings as they say their goodbyes. He addresses the citizens of Lamberg, admitting he's not as strong as his father, but asking for their support to protect everyone. The people are moved and promise to help him, encouraging him to do his best. He officially announces himself as the head of the Louvent house, and everyone bows in respect. Meanwhile, a mysterious woman overhears men discussing the Duke's assassination and asks them to tell her more. 3 months pass after Raven's death. Ars visits his father's grave, admitting he's still adjusting to his responsibilities as Lord, but managing thanks to everyone's help. He doubts he'll ever match his father, but is determined to do his best. Ars joins his group and sets off for Kunar to attend the meeting of the Lords. Before starting, Lumiere asks everyone to pray in honor of Raven. He officially announces Als as the head of the Louvent house, and Als pledges to do his best to fulfill his duties. Orsio notices Ars's newfound confidence, and the other lords see him as an equal, holding high hopes for him. The meeting begins, and Lumiere outlines the hostilities between the brothers, Kurin and Vas. Kurin has raised an army, but Vas, as the Archantess and capo of Mission, has more soldiers and resources. Renard points out that Kurin controls the commercial city of Semplar, giving him economic leverage. Kurin is trying to secure neighboring districts, but the district of Parina refuses to yield. Parina is a minor domain with a small army, but the shortest route to attack Arkantos passes through it, making it strategically critical. Lumiere admits he wants to avoid unnecessary conflict, but the resistance at Parina forces him to act. Everyone seems determined to follow through, but then Aris asks for permission to try convincing Parina to join them instead. The room is taken by surprise. Days earlier, Rizal had suspected Parina's unusual behavior. They were vulnerable to attack, so he wondered why the district was resisting. He suggested gathering intelligence before launching an attack. Ars asks the lords for suggestions. Rietz proposes hiring a mercenary group called Shadow, known for espionage and information gathering. Ars agrees, asking him to make contact. Razal suggests that if the council brings up Parina, Ars should offer to handle it personally. Back at the meeting, Ars explains his suspicions to the lords. Lumiere is convinced and grants him permission to investigate. Ars breathes a sigh of relief once the meeting ends, though he's still nervous. Outside, the orphans greet them, and Charlotte marvels at how much they've grown. She hands out smoked meat while Ars realizes how well the orphanage he built in Canare district is doing. He had instructed his people to take in as many street children as possible, and it shows. The children excitedly share their dreams and thank Ars for changing their lives. They mention that Charlotte sends most of her salary to help run the orphanage, which earns her their gratitude as well. Charlotte is thrilled that the orphanage is in a big city, giving the children more opportunities. Ars is surprised to see Lycia, who explains she came along with her father to the meeting and wanted to see her fiancé while in town. Ars feels awkward and unsure how to act as Lycia notices the children's joy around him. One child dirties her dress, causing Ars to panic, but Lycia simply takes off her shoes and plays with the child. Ars is amazed by her. His father set him up good before leaving. That night, Ars and the others stay at the orphanage. Ars talks to Lycia, who wants to accompany him to meet the shadow mercenaries. He warns her it's too dangerous, but she insists, and he reluctantly agrees to pick her up at her lodging the next day. Instead, she reveals she'll spend the night at the orphanage, surprising everyone. They realize why she brought so much luggage. Ars prepares her room, but she insists on sleeping with him. Ars acts shocked. The commotion wakes Charlotte, leading to a playful dispute over who gets to sleep with him. Rizal thinking, how do I sign up for this? But Charlotte grabs him, allowing everyone to rest together. The next morning, the boys note how exhausted they are from lack of sleep. I wonder what they did all night. Rietz informs them that the meeting with Shadow has been scheduled. They thank the women at the orphanage for their hospitality and head to the bar. Rietz explains that he got in touch with Shadow through a mercenary colleague. He details Shadow's specialties in espionage and information gathering, sometimes even assassination. Ars is intimidated, but Reitz is more worried about Shadow's new leader, who is extremely competent and elevated the group to a new level. Shadow only takes jobs that catch his attention, so Ars hopes they'll accept the task. At the bar, they're met with glaring eyes from the patrons. A man tells them to leave, but Rietz gives a secret code allowing them entry. Ars senses the leader might be observing them, so he scans the room using his ability. A waitress arrives to take their order, and Ars is startled by her stats. He excuses himself to the bathroom and checks Ritz's stats, confirming his ability works. He realizes the waitress is actually a man, which is exactly what happened on my Thailand trip. The man suddenly grabs Ars with a knife, demanding to know how he discovered his identity as Shadow's leader. Rietz throws a knife, forcing him to release Ars. Rietz then grabs the man's arm, warning him of the danger he's in. Lycia steps in, telling the leader not to underestimate them. She explains he must honor Ars' request to make up for his earlier rudeness. The man threatens to escape after eliminating Ars, but Lycia calmly explains that's impossible with Rietz present and that she would personally hunt him if he tried. Ars realizes how formidable she is, and the leader laughs before agreeing to the request. He's curious how Ars discovered his identity. Ars reveals his ability to see people's stats and potential, calling the man Mazik, a name he hasn't used in a long time. The leader, Pham, is shocked but impressed. He acknowledges Ars' skill and decides to accept the job, recognizing that Ars is a winning horse based on the strength of the people around him. Rietz congratulated Lycia, and she revealed that she noticed something was off with Ars' expression before he left. Curious, they had decided to follow him. Together, they explained the job to Pham, who immediately charged a gold coin but promised he would need 5 days to gather the information. Ars was shocked at how fast they could work. Meanwhile, Charlotte was eating with Rizal when the trio returned to the bar, announcing that they had already spoken with the leader and he approved the request. Pham interrupted them, offering a free meal to Charlotte. Ars was taken aback by his acting skills. He moved with a grace so convincing it made him seem like a woman. I know Ars, I was fooled too. 5 days later, Ars and Reitz returned to the tavern, but Pham was the only one present. He explained that everyone else was on other jobs, as investigations required a lot of manpower. Pham revealed that the request had been a success, and Ars was shocked to learn that he had personally handled their task after it caught his interest. Pham refused to reveal his methods for obtaining the information, instead presenting a piece of paper to show why Purina would not ally with Kurin. It was a pact bearing the signatures and seals of nobles allied with Vass. Reitz immediately noticed that all of Vass's allies would have copies. They recognized Purina's seal but were shocked to see the mark of Massa, a city near Lamberg with a large population and one of the largest military forces on the continent. Reitz had been happy that Massa had allied with Kurin, but this suggested betrayal. They would side with the younger son. If Kurin and his allies invaded Purina, Massa could launch a surprise attack, tipping the war in the enemy's favor. Pham reasoned that Purina must have judged Kurin the likely loser in the succession battle, explaining their refusal to ally. Rietz wondered if the alliance pact was genuine, since acquiring such a document would be no small feat. Pham simply repeated that he didn't disclose his methods, but assured them he had found the document where the chief of Purina lived. Rietz apologized for doubting him, and Pham understood. It was a natural reaction. Ars was impressed by his skill, thinking of him as a true ninja. He attempted to pay Pham, who refused, saying this was his way of making up for being rude when they first met. Ars thanked him, but decided to pay a little extra for the next job. Wink wink. They traveled to Canary District to present the findings to Lumiere. He questioned the document's authenticity, but Ars assured him it came from the chief of Purina's house. Lumiere was surprised. Adam, the chief of Massa, had always been loyal to Curran. He ordered Renard to send the document to the other lords, praising Ars for uncovering it and preventing a bigger problem. Renard studied the paper and noticed inconsistencies in Massa's signature and seal. Comparing it to another document from the same district, the differences became clear. Lumiere trusted Renard's judgment, and Auis realized that his ability didn't account for special skills or cunning, reminding him that stats alone couldn't judge a person's capability. They concluded that Purina had been tricked into believing Massa betrayed them, buying time per Vass. Rizal speculated that the enemy sought a temporary alliance to mine explosive mana stones. Lumiere and Renard confirmed it. Purina was one of the few places with this rare material, essential for powerful spells and weapons. Vass intended to exploit the false alliance to extract as many stones as possible. Rizal ruled out attacking Purina, arguing that the only option was to reveal the truth and win them back. An unnecessary battle would only weaken their side. Lumiere mentioned that he had sent numerous messengers with no response, but Ars had a plan. Ars managed to secure an audience with the chief of Purina by writing a letter pretending to seek alliance with Vass. The chief, who looked like a potato with sideburns, was curious how Ars obtained the alliance paper. They discussed Massa's sudden shift in allegiance and its strategic importance, and Ars reminded the chief of Massa's long-standing loyalty to Curran, questioning why they would betray their lord and risk being surrounded. The chief of Purina realized Ars had only sent the letter to secure the meeting and ordered his men to arrest them. Rights intervened, preventing any attack like a Bollywood hero. Ars declared they had come in peace. At that moment, the chief of Massa, Adam, revealed himself. The chief of Purina was stunned, but Ars asked him to listen. It was Rizal's idea all along. Adam was furious when he learned his seal had been forged for such a cheap trick. He affirmed that Massa had never betrayed Curran and would never do so. Adam asked the chief of Purina if he remained loyal to Vass. The chief admitted he now wished to join Curran, asking to be accepted after being misled. Adam acknowledged that the chief of Purina had acted with the best interests of his people in mind, even if he had been deceived. He deferred to Ars to make the final decision. Ars forgave him, recognizing that everyone makes mistakes, and was pleased to have resolved the issue without bloodshed. The chief of Purina felt both ashamed and grateful, promising to support them however he could. Adam also thanked Ars for avoiding an unnecessary conflict, hoping for good things from him in the future. Ars returned home, recounting everything that had happened to his father. Ars thanked Rights and Rizal for their help in avoiding a fight, silently resolving to become a great lord who could continue protecting Lamberg. One of the maids rushed in with news. Lumiere had arrived to pay his respects to Raven. She added that Curran wished to meet Ars. Terror gripped him at the thought. After how he had handled the Purina incident, he felt unworthy to meet someone of such importance. Lumiere, noticing his panic, reassured him that the meeting was imminent. Ars began to freak out, but Rietz and Rizal encouraged him to stay composed. Ars straightened, declaring that it would be an honor, and Lumiere smiled at his newfound confidence. Meanwhile, Charlotte was searching desperately for a dress for Curran's banquet, only to be told by a maid that they had already left. Bros before hoes. On the way, Ars, still nervous, wondered why someone as influential as Curran wanted to meet him. Rietz explained that all the top nobles were called, and Rizal suggested it might be a morale-boosting move before the war. They arrived in Semplar, and Ars was awed by the sprawling commercial city. What New York City wished to be. He silently hoped Lambert might one day be as prosperous. Rights reminded him that the banquet was a golden opportunity to build connections and strengthen his reputation among the nobles. Ars steeled himself to make the most of it. That night, the banquet hall was packed with Curran's allied nobles, and Ars could feel their curious eyes on him. He noticed Lumiere's popularity, with nobles praising his usual impressive performance. Suddenly, Lumiere called for Ars, introducing him to the group and highlighting his role in resolving the Purina conflict. As the announcement of Curran's arrival echoed through the hall, everyone lowered their heads. Ars scanned him with his ability, confirming that Curran was an exceptional leader with remarkable combat stats. He also wondered about Vass's rumored capabilities, though he suspected some rumors might be propaganda to undermine Curran. Curran began his speech, warning that Vass had waged war against him. He explained that the Summerforth Empire would not intervene despite his claim to the Mission Duchy, criticizing the empire's declining regime. His goal was to unite the districts and declare independence after defeating Vass. The audience was shocked, but Curran's confidence inspired them and they pledged their support. Curran then singled out Ars, praising him for resolving a major conflict without bloodshed. The nobles applauded under Lumiere's lead, amazed that someone so young could achieve this. During the banquet, Ars grew exhausted from socializing. Seeking fresh air on the balcony, he was joined by Curran, who had heard that Ars had a keen eye for evaluating people. Curran asked what he thought of his subordinates. Ars, honest as always, confessed that he had seen their stats but had not found anyone particularly impressive besides Lumiere. Curran's expression turned serious. Ars continued, admitting that he believed his own subordinates were more capable. Curran nodded, pleased with the candor. He agreed, while he had strong men, many lacked true talent. Concerned about his brother's skilled subordinates, Curran explained he was eager to see new talent emerge and now expected great things from Ars. He extended an offer. If Ars helped him win the war, he would be made chief of Kunair. Ars asked about Lumiere, and Curran explained he would be given an even higher position as Curran trusted him completely. Curran also requested Ars's subordinates, but Ars politely refused. Curran invited him to the War Council and encouraged him to help identify talented individuals. Ars resolved to live up to their expectations. Meanwhile, Vass was in the Archantess castle discovering that Curran had resolved the Parina incident. Lemus, his vassal, reassured him that they had enough mana stones to win, while Thomas reminded him that Curran lacked competent commanders aside from Lumiere, yet Vass remained unsatisfied. He inquired about Marielle's whereabouts. Thomas confessed he didn't know, thinking she had given herself over to drink. Vass insisted she should join his side, setting aside the past. Thomas refused, believing she was incapable, but Vass, confident in her abilities, resolved to recruit her. Ars finally returned home, where Charlotte was shocked to learn that they had been invited to Curran's War Council. Ars felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. The next day, they met with Pham, offering 20 gold coins if he could find someone truly capable. Pham promised to complete the job. As they left the bar, someone bumped into Ars, knocking him over. She helped him up, but Wrights immediately scolded her for the accident. The newcomer was Marielle, a homeless young woman asking for a job at the bar, but Pham quickly realized she was no ordinary person. She had seen through his disguise, something that piqued his interest. Pham, always intrigued by talent, introduced himself under a fake name and decided to hire her. Her first day was chaotic. She spilled drinks, botched orders, and even snuck a few drinks herself. After closing, Pham asked her some probing questions. Marielle, sensing ulterior motives, answered honestly. She explained she had worked for the Duke of Missy with her brother, but he had recently died. While the bartender suspected she was lying, Pham believed her and offered a better job. Ars received a letter from Pham shortly after. He had found someone, and she would be visiting the mansion. When Marielle arrived, Ars realized she was the same girl who had bumped into him earlier. The trio was unimpressed at first, but Pham assured them she was as capable as any of them. Marielle, surprised that the Lord of Lamberg was a child, asked if he would hire her. Ars used his ability on her and nearly fell over her. Stats were insane. She was a monster of talent. Ars knew she had worked for the Duke, which made her all the more impressive. Rietz, however, warned that her brother Thomas was working for Lord Vass, but Ars decided to accept her anyway, recognizing her potential and huge knockers. The next day, Rietz complained about Marielle's behavior. She slacked off and skipped work to sleep. "We all deserve a life like that." He told Ars to fire her immediately. Rizal joined in, saying she had forced him to run instead of study. Her methods were insane. Ars defended her, but before they could argue further, an explosion shook the mansion. Panic ensued. They quickly discovered Charlotte was behind it, demonstrating her magic at Marielle's request. Ars warned everyone to calm down, but it was clear Marielle was making life difficult for them all. She insisted they accept her for who she was, and Ars threatened to take action if she misbehaved. She explained she stayed because he was the only one who had accepted her and realized she needed to get along with the others. Marielle proposed the MOT battle, let her stay if she won. Ars was skeptical, but Wrights wanted to see what she was made of. The rules were laid out. 2 teams would fight in the Eastern Forest until sunset. To win, you had to either capture the enemy commander or wipe out the opposing team. Soldiers hit in the head or chest would be eliminated. Charlotte asked if magic could be used. Ars allowed only light and sound spells, providing her with magic potions. As teams were formed, nobody wanted to join Marielle. They wanted her to lose, knowing she'd be fired if she did. Eventually, the noobs took her side, reluctantly agreeing to fight for her. Reitz's team entered the forest, confident in their strength, while Rizal led their side, nervous about facing the girls but determined to do his best. Ars commanded Marielle's team, mostly inexperienced soldiers. He worried they were going to be steamrolled by Reitz's group. Marielle, undaunted, admired Ars as a fighter and recognized Charlotte's destructive magic. She acknowledged her soldiers were weak, but confidently assured them they could win with her plan. Meanwhile, Ritz's team set up traps in the forest, anticipating that Marielle's team couldn't win in a head-on fight. They planned to lure Reitz into an ambush, splitting their forces strategically. However, an explosion revealed a mage from Marielle's team, claiming he wanted to betray her and revealing her plans. He said she intended to trap Reitz so she could take out Rizal. Reitz didn't believe him. He knew Ars wouldn't allow such a reckless plan. The mage confessed that he hated Marielle and was lying about her strategy. He simply wanted her to fail. The boy from Marielle's team revealed her real plan to Reitz. What a bitch! She was going to lure them into a trap and surround them, striking after he used sound magic. Reitz didn't trust him, of course, and demanded he surrender his wand. The boy complied, but Reitz immediately ordered his men to capture him, and Reitz explained he seemed suspicious. A soldier noticed he was hiding another wand. Cornered, the boy tried to deny it, but Reitz's intimidation was too much. Trembling, he confessed it was indeed meant to trigger the sound magic signal. Reitz immediately led his men around the woods, anticipating the ambush. Ahead, they spotted a group of soldiers, but as soon as they attacked, it became clear they were all dummies. Marielle emerged, laughing, praising the boy for his acting. Reitz demanded to know why she was alone with Alice. She simply smiled, confident she could escape, and scooped Alice into her arms like a kid. "Catch me if you can," she challenged. Reitz barked orders, and the chase was on. Lycia and the others cheered, while Ars clutched tightly to Marielle, convinced they were about to get caught. But Marielle remained calm, assuring him not to worry. Reitz pressed forward, but his men tripped over traps, one after another, until even he found himself caught, though he managed to leap free. Charging onward, he plowed through other traps, only for Marielle to unleash her sound magic, stunning them all. He spotted her for a moment before she vanished again. Rizal's group meanwhile ran into Ars's soldiers, who signaled the next phase of the battle. Rizal realized this was only half of Ars's forces, but they knew they had the advantage in an even fight. They attacked, remembering Marielle's taunts about their weakness, determined to prove themselves. More of their soldiers appeared, encircling Rizal's group. Chaos erupted. Charlotte used sound magic to escape, inadvertently revealing their location to Marielle. The whole sequence wasn't just a battle, it was Marielle's plan to isolate Rizal. She's collecting kids like Pokemon at this point. Reitz caught on, but Marielle accelerated. Determined not to lose, Reitz reminded himself of Ars's faith in him and his promise to stay by his side. Ars grew dizzy, but Marielle spotted Rizal approaching. Reitz nearly caught them, but Ars cleverly fired sound magic to distract him. Marielle struck first, tagging Rizal and securing the win. Ars declared Marielle the victor and her soldiers erupted in celebration. Veteran soldiers grumbled about her dirty tricks, but Reitz shrugged. There was nothing unfair here. He still disliked Marielle's audacity, but he had to respect her skill. Marielle, ever bold, complimented Ars's team and teased that things were going to get interesting. She praised Ars for having such capable retainers, and he admitted all he wanted was a place where everyone could be happy. Marielle, ever sharp, remarked that he would need to become king to make that dream real. Ars froze, stunned, but she smiled reassuringly. He had what it took. That evening, the mock battle's victory was celebrated with a grand feast. Marielle outdrank everyone effortlessly. Soldiers begged her to teach them, but she pointed out that Reitz already provided the best training they could get. Rizal realized he needed more stamina. On the battlefield, tactics alone weren't enough. Marielle told him that if he got caught or killed, more soldiers would fall, so survival mattered as much as strategy. Determined, Rizal prepared to train harder, but Charlotte interrupted him with the best few moments of his life. Ars watched, proud, seeing his team adapt and grow alongside Marielle. He pondered her words about becoming king, and Reitz approached, apologizing for losing the mock battle. Ars reassured him, recalling his promise to Raven and feeling the weight of his own responsibility. Reitz vowed to train twice as hard, and Ars smiled, reaffirming his dream, a world without war where everyone could be happy, and Reitz, loyal as ever, promised to help him achieve it no matter what. Alright guys, this is it for this video. Let me know in the comments if you want part 2 of this series. Alright, goodbye.